The auctioneer's gavel hovered in the air, sweat beading on his forehead as he stared at the untamable stallion in the center ring. "Going once for 15,000. His voice cracked slightly. Nobody moved. The massive black horse, known only as Tempest, had already injured 3 handlers that morning, his hooves striking sparks against the steel barriers as he thrashed against his restraints. From the back corner of the auction house, a quiet voice cut through the tension. 20,000. Every head turned toward the sound. In the shadows sat Grayson Hawthorne, his weathered hands gripping the wheels of his chair. The man who had once been the most celebrated horse trainer in 3 states, now sat motionless from the waist down, the result of a riding accident that had shattered more than just his spine 5 years ago. "Sir, I'm not sure you understand," the auctioneer stammered, his voice amplifying through the microphone. "This horse is, well, he's been deemed untrainable, dangerous. The insurance alone, 25,000. Grayson interrupted, his steel gray eyes never leaving the stallion. Round him, murmurs rippled through the crowd like wildfire. Some laughed nervously. Others whispered about the crazy cripple who had clearly lost his mind along with his legs. Tempest's ears swiveled toward Grayson's voice, and for a moment, just a moment, the thrashing stopped. The horse's wild eyes found his across the dusty arena, and something electric passed between them. Recognition, understanding, pain calling to pain, going once, going twice. The auctioneer's voice trembled. No one else dared bid on certain death, sold to the gentleman in the back. The crowd erupted in shocked murmurs as Grayson wheeled himself toward the payment desk. His daughter, Paisley, rushed to his side, her face pale with worry. "Dad, what are you doing? You can't possibly handle that animal. Look at him." Tempest was indeed a sight to behold, standing 17 hands high. His coat was the color of midnight storms, muscles rippling beneath skin that bore the scars of countless battles. His mane whipped around his head like dark flames, and his eyes held the fury of a creature that had been broken too many times to trust again. "I see exactly what I need to see," Grayson replied quietly, signing the purchase documents with steady hands. "That horse isn't mean, Paisley. He's scared. There's a difference." The stable manager, a burly man named Corvick, approached with obvious reluctance. "Mr. Hawthorne, with all due respect, we can't guarantee safe transport. This animal has already—" "I'll handle the transport myself," Grayson interrupted. "My ranch, my responsibility." As the paperwork was finalized, Grayson watched Tempest through the glass partition. The horse had gone still again, but his breathing was labored, his nostrils flaring. Other potential buyers walked past his stall, shaking their heads and muttering about damaged goods and lost causes. But Grayson saw something else entirely. In the depths of those dark eyes, he recognized the same hollow ache that had haunted his own reflection for 5 years. The same desperate need to prove that broken didn't mean worthless. "Dad," Paisley whispered, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Are you sure about this?" For the first time in years, Grayson smiled, not the polite, practiced smile he'd worn since the accident, but something real, something alive. "Sweetheart, I've never been more sure of anything in my life." The horse trailer rolled through the gates of Hawthorne Ranch like a storm cloud approaching. Grayson had insisted on making the journey himself, navigating his specially modified truck with hand controls while Paisley followed in her car, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. Behind them, Tempest's hooves thundered against the metal floor in a rhythm that sounded like war drums. The ranch spread across 100 acres of rolling Kentucky hills, its white fences and red barns a testament to better days. Before the accident, Hawthorne Ranch had been legendary, the place where impossible horses became champions. Now it stood mostly empty, the training rings silent, the stable doors closed to all but a few gentle mares and geldings. "Easy, easy," Grayson murmured to himself, as much as to the horse as he backed the trailer toward the specially prepared paddock. He'd spent the past week reinforcing the fencing, adding height and strength to contain a horse that had already escaped from 3 different facilities. Corvick had insisted on following them, bringing 2 of his best handlers. As they prepared to unload Tempest, the stable manager's face was grim. "Mr. Hawthorne, I really think we should tranquilize him first." He's been thrashing for the entire trip. No drugs. Grayson replied firmly, positioning his wheelchair near the trailer's rear gate. He needs to know I trust him. The gates swung open, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then Tempest exploded from the trailer like a cannonball, his hooves striking the ground with such force that dust clouds billowed around him. The handlers scrambled backward, but Grayson remained perfectly still, his eyes locked on the horse. Tempest reared up, his front hooves pawing at the air, a magnificent and terrifying sight. His coat gleamed with sweat, and his breath came in sharp snorts that sounded almost like laughter. Wild, untouchable, free, beautiful. Grayson whispered Dot for 30 minutes. Tempest ran the perimeter of the paddock, testing every board, every post, every possible escape route. The handlers watched nervously, ready to intervene if the horse tried to jump the fence. But Grayson simply watched, reading the animal's body language like a familiar book. Finally, Tempest slowed to a walk, then stopped in the center of the paddock. His head was high, his ears pricked forward, and his eyes, those intelligent, haunted eyes, were fixed on the man in the wheelchair. "That's it," Grayson said softly. "That's what I wanted to see." Paisley frowned. "What, Dad?" "He's just standing there. He's thinking," Grayson explained. "For the first time since we got him, he's not running on pure instinct. He's trying to figure me out." The standoff lasted nearly an hour. Neither man nor horse moved, both studying the other. With the intensity of chess masters, the handlers grew restless, but Grayson remained patient. He'd learned patience the hard way during those first terrible months in the hospital, when every breath had been a struggle, and every dawn had brought fresh despair. Dot, as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, Tempest finally moved, not toward the fence, not in another explosive display of power, but slowly, deliberately, toward the man in the wheelchair. He stopped just outside arm's reach, his massive head tilted slightly to one side. "Hello, boy," Grayson said quietly. I know how it feels." The horse's ears flicked forward, and for a moment, his eyes softened. Then, as if remembering himself, he snorted and wheeled away, trotting to the far end of the paddock. "That's enough for today," Grayson announced, backing his wheelchair from the fence. "Let him settle in." Corvick shook his head in amazement. "I've never seen anything like it. He actually came toward you." "He's not evil," Grayson replied. "He's just been hurt too many times. But he remembers what it felt like to trust, even if he's afraid to try again." As they prepared to leave, Paisley lingered by the fence. "Dad, what if you're wrong? What if he really is too dangerous?" Grayson paused, looking back at Tempest, who stood silhouetted against the dying light. "Then I'll have given him a good home for as long as he needs it. But I don't think I'm wrong, sweetheart. Sometimes the most broken things are the ones worth saving." Dawn broke crisp and clear over Hawthorne Ranch, and Grayson was already at the paddock fence before the sun crested the hills. He'd brought coffee in a thermos and a folding chair, settling in to simply watch. No agenda, no training schedule, no expectations, just presence. Tempest stood at the far end of the paddock, his dark coat steaming in the cool morning air. He'd been there when Grayson arrived, as if he'd been waiting. For 3 days now, they'd maintained this ritual, man and horse acknowledging each other across the distance, neither pushing, neither retreating. "Morning," Grayson said quietly, the same greeting he'd used each day. Tempest's ears swiveled toward the sound, but he didn't move. Dot, at precisely 7:30, Paisley arrived with breakfast. "Any progress?" she asked, settling into the chair beside her father's wheelchair. "He's eating," Grayson replied, nodding toward the hay that had been placed in the paddock. "Yesterday he wouldn't touch it until I left. Today he ate while I was here. That's progress. It's trust," Grayson explained. "He's vulnerable when he eats. Predators attack when prey animals have their heads down. The fact that he's willing to eat in my presence means he's starting to see me as safe." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the horse move slowly around his enclosure. Tempest's gait was magnificent even at a walk. His movements were fluid and powerful, like poetry written in muscle and bone. But Grayson noticed something else, something that made his trained eye narrow with concern. "He's favoring his left hind leg," he murmured, Paisley squinted. I don't see anything. It's subtle, but he's definitely compensating. Grayson made a mental note to call Dr. Vaughn, the veterinarian who'd worked with him for 15 years. Old injury, probably, never properly treated. At noon, Grayson wheeled himself closer to the fence, not all the way, just a few feet nearer than he'd been before. Tempest noticed immediately, his head shooting up, his body tensing, but he didn't run. He stood his ground, watching. Easy, boy, Grayson said. I'm not going anywhere you don't want me to. For the first time, Tempest took a step forward, then another. His movements were careful, calculated, but he was definitely approaching. When he was about 10 feet away, he stopped, his nostrils flaring as he tested the air. That's it, Grayson whispered. That's my boy. The horse stretched his neck forward, not quite close enough to touch, but close enough that Grayson could see the intelligence in his eyes. They were brown. He realized not black as they'd appeared in the auction house, but a deep, rich brown flecked with gold. You're beautiful, Grayson said softly. You know that, whatever they did to you, whoever hurt you, it doesn't define you. Tempest's ears pricked forward, and for a moment, Grayson could have sworn the horse was listening not just to his words, but to the meaning behind them. Then, as if the moment had become too intense, Tempest shook his head and walked away. Dr. Vaughn arrived that afternoon, her weathered face breaking into a smile when she saw Grayson. Brielle Vaughn had been with him through every triumph and disaster of his career, and she'd been one of the few people who'd continued to believe in him after the accident. So, she said, studying Tempest from a safe distance, this is the famous killer horse. He's not a killer, Grayson replied firmly. He's just been misunderstood. Dr. Vaughn's experienced eye cataloged the horse's condition. He's magnificent, I'll give you that. But he's also hurt. Look how he's standing. You see it too, left hind definitely. Probably an old fracture that healed wrong. And see how he holds his head. There's tension there. Someone used a harsh bit on him. Probably repeatedly. Grayson's jaw tightened. Can you help him? I can try, but I'll need to get close to him, and something tells me that's not going to be easy. Give me time, Grayson said. He's starting to trust me, a little more each day. As if to prove his point, Tempest approached the fence again, this time coming close enough that Grayson could see his own reflection in the horse's dark eyes. Hello, beautiful, Grayson whispered. Tomorrow we'll try something new. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday morning when the mist was still rising from the grass. Grayson had been working with Tempest for 2 weeks, gradually building trust through consistency and patience. Today, for the first time, he'd brought something new, a lead rope, coiled loosely in his lap. Tempest noticed it immediately. His entire body went rigid, his eyes rolling white at the edges. He'd been approaching the fence, but now he backed away, snorting and shaking his head. I know, Grayson said quietly. I know what that represents. But this is different. This is choice. He dropped the rope on the ground beside his wheelchair, making no move to pick it up. I'm not going to force anything on you. When you're ready, if you're ready, it'll be here. For an hour, they maintained their standoff. Tempest circled the paddock, always keeping the maximum distance between himself and the rope. But his ears remained pricked forward, and his eyes never left Grayson's face. He's remembering, Grayson murmured to himself. Good and bad, all mixed together. At precisely 11 o'clock, something shifted. Tempest stopped his pacing and walked directly to the fence. Not cautiously, not hesitantly, but with purpose. He stretched his neck over the top rail, his muzzle just inches from Grayson's hand. Easy, boy, Grayson whispered, slowly raising his hand. Easy. The first touch was electric. Tempest's skin twitched under Grayson's fingers, but he didn't pull away. The horse's muzzle was soft as velvet, warm, with life and breath. For a moment, man and horse simply existed in that contact. To damaged souls finding solace and connection. Then Tempest nickered a low, gentle sound that Grayson hadn't heard from him before. It was the sound of a horse who remembered what it felt like to be loved. That's it, Grayson said, his voice thick with emotion. That's my boy. The spell was broken by the arrival of Paisley and Dr. Vaughn. Tempest immediately backed away, but he didn't run. Instead, He watched the newcomers with curious eyes, as if trying to determine whether they were friends or foes. "I don't believe it," Dr. Vaughn said quietly. "He actually let you touch him. He's ready for more." Grayson replied, "Not everything, but more." They spent the next hour working together. Dr. Vaughn examined Tempest from a distance while Grayson provided a calming presence. The horse's left hind leg was indeed problematic, an old injury that had healed incorrectly, causing him chronic pain. "No wonder he's been so difficult," Dr. Vaughn explained. "He's been in constant discomfort. We can help him, but it's going to require regular treatment, whatever it takes," Grayson said without hesitation. That afternoon, Grayson made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. He wheeled his chair directly into the paddock. "Dad, no," Paisley cried. But he was already through the gate. Tempest froze, his entire body coiled with tension. For a moment, the air crackled with possibility: flight, fight, or something else entirely. Then, slowly, deliberately, the horse walked toward the man in the wheelchair. He stopped just out of arm's reach, his head lowered slightly. It was a gesture of respect, of acknowledgement, two warriors recognizing each other's pain. "I know what it's like," Grayson said softly, "to be told you're broken, to be written off as useless, to feel like you'll never be whole again." Tempest's ears flicked forward, and he took another step closer. "But we're not broken," Grayson continued. "We're just different, and different can be beautiful." The horse lowered his head further, until it was level with Grayson's face. They stayed like that for a long moment, breathing the same air, sharing the same space. Then Tempest did something extraordinary. He gently rested his forehead against Grayson's shoulder. "Oh," Paisley whispered from outside the fence. "Oh, Dad." It was a gesture of absolute trust, of complete surrender. The most dangerous horse in 3 states had chosen to be vulnerable with the man everyone said could never train horses again. "That's it, boy," Grayson said, his voice breaking. "That's it. We're going to be okay, both of us." 3 weeks after that first moment of connection, Hawthorne Ranch had transformed. The silence that had blanketed the property for 5 years was broken by the sound of hoof beats and the gentle murmur of conversation. Word had spread through the horse community about the miracle happening in Kentucky, and people came from hundreds of miles away just to witness it. Grayson worked with Tempest every morning, their sessions growing longer and more complex. They'd progressed from simple touch to wearing a halter, from standing still to walking together round the paddock. The horse had even allowed Dr. Vaughn to examine his injured leg, though he kept one eye on Grayson throughout the entire process. "He's like a different animal," Dr. Vaughn marveled as she administered treatment to Tempest's leg. "The tension in his muscles has decreased dramatically. Whatever you're doing, it's working." What Grayson was doing was revolutionary in its simplicity. He wasn't breaking Tempest, he was healing him. Every exercise, every interaction was designed to build confidence rather than establish dominance. When Tempest made a mistake, Grayson simply waited. When he succeeded, he was rewarded with gentle praise, and the thing he craved most: Grayson's continued presence. "Traditional training assumes the horse is the problem," Grayson explained to a group of visiting trainers. "But what if the problem is our approach? What if instead of breaking their spirit, we worked with it?" The visitors were skeptical until they saw the results. Tempest, who had been deemed untrainable, now followed Grayson's wheelchair around the paddock like a devoted dog. He came when called, stopped when asked, and had even begun to play something no one had ever seen him do before. But the real breakthrough came when Grayson decided it was time to try something unprecedented. He'd been working toward this moment for weeks, and he knew it was risky, but he also knew it was necessary. "I want to ride him," he announced to Paisley one morning. Her coffee mug crashed to the floor. "Dad, you can't. Your legs, my legs, don't work," Grayson said calmly. "But my balance is still good, and my arms are strong. I've been thinking about this for weeks. I've designed a special saddle, modified stirrups, additional security straps. It can work. But what if he bucks? What if he runs? Then I'll fall," Grayson replied simply. "But I don't think he will. He trusts me, and I trust him." The special saddle arrived 3 days later, custom-made by a craftsman in Montana who specialized In adaptive equipment, it looked like a cross between a traditional saddle and a racing chair, with high sides for support and a complex system of straps and buckles. Tempest examined the new equipment with curious eyes, sniffing and pawing at it gently. When Grayson placed it on his back, the horse stood perfectly still, as if he understood the importance of the moment. "Easy, boy," Grayson murmured as Paisley and Dr. Vaughn helped him transfer from his wheelchair to the saddle. "This is new for both of us." The moment Grayson settled into the saddle, something magical happened. Tempest's entire demeanor changed. His head came up, his ears pricked forward, and his muscles rippled with contained energy. He wasn't nervous or afraid, he was proud. For the first time in years, he was fulfilling his purpose. "Walk on, Grayson," said softly, applying gentle pressure with his hands on the reins. Tempest responded immediately, his gait smooth and controlled. They moved around the paddock in perfect harmony, man and horse united in purpose. Grayson's face was radiant with joy, and Tempest's eyes sparkled with intelligence and contentment. "It's beautiful," Paisley whispered, tears streaming down her face. They rode for only 10 minutes that first day, but it was enough. When Grayson dismounted, Tempest nickered softly and nuzzled his shoulder, a gesture of partnership, of gratitude, of love. "Good boy," Grayson said, his voice thick with emotion. "Good boy." That night, as he sat in his study writing in his journal, Grayson reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. To broken souls, written off by the world, had found healing in each other. But this was just the beginning. Tomorrow, they would ride again, and the day after that. And eventually, maybe, they would show the world that broken didn't mean defeated. "We're going to change everything," he wrote, "not just for us, but for every horse and every person who's ever been told they're not enough." 6 months after that first ride, Hawthorne Ranch had become a pilgrimage site for horse enthusiasts and adaptive sports advocates alike. The Hawthorne method was being studied by universities, and Grayson's techniques were being adapted by trainers worldwide. But on this particular morning, something even more extraordinary was about to happen. "Are you sure about this?" Paisley asked for the 100th time, as she helped her father prepare for the demonstration. Representatives from the International Equestrian Federation had come to observe, along with journalists from major publications and camera crews from 3 different networks. "I've never been more sure of anything," Grayson replied, adjusting his custom riding gear. "Tempest and I are ready." The horse in question stood nearby, his coat gleaming like polished obsidian in the morning sun. He was no longer the wild, terrified animal from the auction house. His eyes held calm intelligence. His movements were fluid and controlled, and his entire bearing spoke of a creature who had found his purpose. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice crackled over the loudspeaker, "please welcome Grayson, Hawthorne, and Tempest." They entered the arena to thunderous applause. Tempest's head was high, his gait proud and measured. He seemed to understand that this was important, that all eyes were on them. But his attention remained focused on his rider, responding to the slightest shift in weight, the gentlest touch of the reins. What followed was not just a demonstration of horsemanship, it was poetry in motion. Despite his paralyzed legs, Grayson rode with the grace and skill that had made him legendary. Tempest responded to commands that seemed to come from thought alone, their partnership so complete that it was impossible to tell where man ended and horse began. They performed advanced dressage movements, precise jumping sequences, and even a breathtaking routine that Grayson had choreographed to music. The crowd was mesmerized, witnessing something that defied every conventional wisdom about both disabled riders and problem horses. "This is unprecedented," whispered Dr. Caldwell, the Federation representative. "The level of trust, the communication, I've never seen anything like it." As their performance reached its crescendo, Grayson and Tempest executed a movement that brought gasps from the audience. The horse reared up on his hind legs, his front hooves pawing the air, while Grayson maintained perfect balance and control. It was the same movement that had once terrified handlers at the auction house, now transformed into a display of power and grace. When they finished, the arena erupted in a standing ovation that lasted nearly 5 minutes. Tempest stood quietly, his ears pricked forward, seeming to understand that the applause was for both of them. When Grayson dismounted, the horse immediately nuzzled his shoulder, their private moment of connection amid the public celebration. "How did you do it?" asked a reporter, pushing forward with her microphone. "How did you tame the untamable?" Grayson smiled, his hand resting on Tempest's neck. "I didn't tame him. I listened to him. I understood that his wildness wasn't something to be broken. It was something to be channeled. We didn't fight each other. We healed each other." The questions continued for another hour. But the most important conversation happened later, in the quiet of the stable. Paisley found her father sitting beside Tempest's stall, the horse's head draped over his shoulder. "I'm proud of you, Dad," she said quietly, "not just for today, but for everything. You didn't just save his life, you saved your own." Grayson nodded, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "He gave me back my purpose, my identity. For 5 years, I thought I was just a broken man in a wheelchair, but he showed me that I was still a horseman, that I could still make a difference." As the sun set over Hawthorne Ranch, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Grayson made an announcement that would change countless lives. He was establishing the Hawthorne Foundation, dedicated to pairing rescue horses with people who had been written off by society: disabled veterans, troubled youth, anyone who needed to learn that their worth wasn't determined by their circumstances. "Every horse deserves a chance," he said at the press conference, "and every person deserves to feel valuable, regardless of their limitations." Tempest stood beside him as he spoke, no longer needing a lead rope or restraints. He was free, but he chose to stay close to the man who had seen his potential when no one else could. The story of the man in the wheelchair who bid on the fiercest horse had become legend. But it was really just the beginning. In the years that followed, hundreds of horses would find new lives at Hawthorne Ranch. Thousands of people would discover that their disabilities didn't define them. And the world would learn that sometimes the most broken things are the ones capable of the most beautiful transformations. As for Grayson and Tempest, they continued to ride together every morning, their partnership a testament to the power of understanding, patience, and love. They had both been dismissed as beyond hope, but together they had created something magnificent, a bond that proved that healing was possible, that second chances were real, and that sometimes the greatest victories came not from conquering, but from connection. In the end, the man in the wheelchair hadn't tamed the fiercest horse. He had simply shown him that he was worth loving, just as he was. And in return, the horse had given him back the part of himself he thought he had lost forever. The auction house where it all began still held sales every month, but now they told a different story. They spoke of Grayson and Tempest, of the impossible partnership that had changed the world's understanding of what it meant to be broken. And sometimes, just sometimes, when a horse seemed too wild to handle or a person seemed too damaged to help, someone would remember their story and decide to bid anyway. Because sometimes, the most beautiful transformations begin with the courage to see potential where others see only problems. And sometimes, the greatest love stories are between a man and his horse, proving that healing has no limits and hope has no expiration date.